The stationing of a Russian anti-missile weapon on one of the Kuril Islands, claimed by Japan, destroys Japanese hopes for a peace agreement with Russia. In early December, Russia put a state-of-the-art missile defense system into operation in the Far East. The battery on the Kuril island of Iturup is now ready for action, reported the Defense Ministry's TV broadcaster Zvezda. The Russian announcement surprised the Japanese government. In October, Moscow only spoke of a build-up as part of a maneuver. Tokyo immediately described the move as unacceptable. The stationing creates military facts with far-reaching consequences. Russia is pushing its line of defense in the Pacific against the USA and its ally Japan, directly to Japanese territory and the US military bases there. The mobile defense weapon with the designation S-300V4 fires supersonic missiles and can hit up to 24 targets at the same time, at a distance of up to 400 kilometers and an altitude of 37 kilometers. At the same time, the stationing on Iturup proves that Russia wants to keep the island and use it militarily. This ends Japan's hopes for an agreement in the Kuril dispute with Russia. Ex-Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had negotiated more than 24 times with Russian President Vladimir Putin over a period of 7 years to end the territorial dispute over the 4 Kuril Islands north of Hokkaido. The Soviet Union occupied the islands in the final stages of World War II. With this charm offensive, Abe had caused some astonishment among his Western partners. But he wanted to pave the way for a peace treaty with a Kuril-based solution and thereby draw a final line under the Second World War. His successor, Yoshihide Suga, confirmed in September that he would complete these negotiations. From this dream, Japan has now woken up roughly. The stationing means that Abe's pro-Russian policy has failed, says German-Japan expert Sebastian Maslov. This would harden the fronts in the territorial dispute again. An early peace agreement between the two countries is now unlikely, says Maslov, who teaches at Sendai Women's University. However, the latest development should not come as a complete surprise to the Japanese, as it has been evident for some time. 3,500 Russian soldiers have been on the islands of Iturup and Kunashiri for several years. Since March 2018, 2 Su-35S fighter planes have been parked at Iturup Civil Airport. Russia also brought short-range missiles, radar stations, drones and an artillery unit to the islands. The relocation of T-72B3 main battle tanks to Iturup is reportedly planned. The then Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev underpinned the permanent claim to the Kuril Islands in August 2019 with an official visit by Iturup. Even so, Japan had continued to have its illusions about a breakthrough. At their meeting in early 2019, Abe and Putin agreed to accelerate the negotiations. The joint declaration of 1956 was to serve as the basis. In it, the Soviet Union had promised to return the 2 islands directly bordering Japan, Habomai and Shikotan, and to negotiate the 2 other islands in a peace treaty. Apparently, Abe wanted to contend with the return of the 2 small islands and a joint administration of the remaining 2. Even then, observers doubted whether Putin would ever give up Russian territory. Such a move could easily be interpreted as a sign of weakness. But Russia seized the Kuril Islands primarily in the light of a defense strategy on its Pacific side against the USA. Moscow wants to keep the US naval forces at bay, which are repeatedly approaching the Russian coast. In the end, therefore, the security alliance between Japan and the USA stood in the way of an agreement on the Kuril Islands. Russia also fears that US medium-range missiles will be stationed in Japan in the medium term after the US allowed the ban on these weapons to expire in 2019. In addition to expanding the Kuril Islands into a military base, Moscow is therefore strengthening its Pacific fleet with 70 new warships by 2027. This year alone, 15 ships are put into service. Russia gives more importance to its geostrategic presence in the Asia-Pacific region, explains expert Maslov. Russia is also taking advantage of the power vacuum that the US has left in the region under Trump. The Japanese government now fears a Pacific alliance between Russia and China. The concern is not out of thin air. At the end of October, President Putin declared that a military alliance with China was entirely possible. Moscow and Beijing have been holding joint maneuvers in the Japanese, East Chinese and Yellow Seas for 8 years. 2 years ago, hundreds of tanks and thousands of soldiers from China took part in Russia's largest military exercise since World War II in eastern Siberia. Chinese and Russian fighter bombers patrolled the Sea of Japan for the first time together in July 2019, as a result of which South Korea fired hundreds of warning shots. Moscow's geostrategic moves are likely to influence the Japanese debate about its own missile defense system. This year, Japan had decided against building land-based Aegis missile batteries while Prime Minister Abe was in office, and is now planning to buy defense batteries for its naval forces. But on the agenda of the upcoming talks with US President Joe Biden on the future of the Japanese-American alliance, Russia should now be much higher up than in the past, believes Japan analyst Maslov. And if you want to stay informed, please subscribe to my channel, visit my other channels. I'll see you in my next video. Viel Spaß!